one and all. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. He struck him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Correa fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Welcome on, Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matt Moreno. Matt, it's a Sunday night. The World Series is still going on, of course. Dodgers not involved. Phillies, Astros 1-1. Couple weeks to process everything that's happened. How are we feeling on a Sunday night tonight?
Pretty disconnected from baseball, honestly. I watched a little bit of Game 1 between the Phillies and the Astros. I didn't watch any of Game 2, and I don't know if how much of the rest of it I'll watch. It's kind of just like if I'm home, if nothing else is really grabbing my attention, maybe I'll throw it on for a few innings. But it's a weird feeling.
We got any TV shows going on in the Moreno household right now?
Not too much. A little bit of Survivor.
Okay.
And we've been, for the past couple months, we've been going through the Americans, because I watched the first 2 episodes when it first aired, and then I kind of fell behind and never caught up. And so a couple months ago decided to pick that back up. So we're finally in the last season.
Okay, I don't think I made it all the way through, but that was a great show when it came out. But, well, folks, we appreciate those joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, those joining us via Twitter. We appreciate you live. Excuse me. Those joining us the day after, listening to this on our podcast as part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, whether that's on Apple or Google or Spotify, we appreciate you joining us as well. And, of course, if you're watching on YouTube the day after, we appreciate everybody that's engaging with us here as part of the Dodger Blue 1958 community. Tonight on the show, we've got a lot to talk about. Believe it or not, the season hasn't even officially ended. There's Aaron Judge rumors. There's Carlos Correa rumors. There's Trea Turner rumors. We'll get to all that. We'll get to some Dave Roberts stuff and kind of some talk this past couple of weeks about the guarantee he made early on. We'll get into that a little bit. And then awards season. Gold Gloves going to be announced on Tuesday. Player's Choice is going to be announced on Thursday, and then the Silver Slugger, those finalists just came out a couple of days ago, so lots to get to there. The Fielding Bible, those of you waiting for Fielding Bible Awards results, I have good news for you as well. And then we'll get to some questions at the end. We got a good question from one person on Twitter who I don't think was able to make it tonight, but asking about should the Dodgers sell high on Gonsolin, Lux, those types of guys. So, Matt, let's get into it, and I'll frame this first question as kind of big picture. What should be the Dodgers' free agency strategy? Is it best player available, i.e. a guy like Aaron Judge, or even trying to acquire a guy like Shohei Ohtani? Or do you think the Dodgers' number one priority should be, can they go get a shortstop, because that's a position that internally there's not really anybody to replace?
I mean, I think if Ohtani's available, then you definitely go and do something like that. But I'll remove him from the equation just because I don't see, A, the Angels doing anything right now, and B, much less sending him to the Dodgers. So aside from that, I think you have to go for your biggest need. And I think that would be a little bit of a shift from their approach in past seasons. And I know that it runs a little counterintuitive to what I also argued at the trade deadline was, hey, go get kind of the best player available, even if it is sort of a starting pitcher. And I was advocating for starting pitching, but that's, a beaten path. We don't need to go down there again. But at this point, I mean, the Dodgers have a talented team, and, we unfortunately saw that sometimes the talent can go cold. But if, they were to lose Trea Turner in free agency and not necessarily bring in a shortstop, maybe having Aaron Judge or another marquee player certainly helps, but that leaves a pretty big hole because we've talked about, and we're going to continue discussing this offseason, there isn't really a clear-cut option for them at shortstop.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, when we had our Judge conversation last week, on one of our shorter videos, it was kind of like the Dodgers need outfielders. This isn't one of those off seasons where you go into it and it's like, man, the Dodgers are stacked everywhere and they got prospects coming up in all these places. There are actually some legitimate holes when you look across the diamond. I would say the only guy, the guys you feel great about are at catcher, Will Smith, first base, Freddie Freeman, right field, Mookie Betts. You can go right down that side of the field. You feel good about that. You feel good about Max Muncy, I would say, somewhere, whether that's second base or third base. I think you feel good about. I would say you feel good about second base with Gavin Lux. But then once you get to shortstop, Trea Turner's a free agent. I don't think you feel good about that spot. Center field, Cody Bellinger. Do they pay him $18 or $19 million on a one-year deal? I don't think you feel great about that spot. And even left field, yes, Trace Thompson has some years of team control left under his belt. Chris Taylor is still around. Silver Slugger nominee, Chris Taylor, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I don't think you feel good. So I would say center field, left field, and shortstop are all positions of need. Now, here's the biggest part, though. There's nobody in the organization that can play shortstop outside of Gavin Lux, potentially. Potentially Gavin Lux if you want to go down that road. Left field and center field, I think you could make a case they could patch it together with a guy like James Outman, with a guy like Michael Busch potentially. Miguel Vargas, another name we haven't mentioned. I wouldn't put him in the outfield, but he could play some infield DH for you, depending on what Justin Turner, So I would say that the outfield, there are two holes there that I don't think we can overlook, because when I've heard people talk about Judge, it's like they don't need, Judge, and it's like, well, nobody needs Aaron Judge, but they do need outfielders, and Aaron Judge plays outfield. But I sort of, this is a long-winded way of me saying that I do agree that shortstop is the biggest need. They don't have, Jacob Amaya is the only guy in the farm system. He's on the 40-man roster, got off to a hot start. I was having conversations with Justin Lorber. Hey, how do we feel about this? Like, could this be a guy who makes a jump? Slowed down considerably over the second half of the season. And so I land on shortstop, Matt. So then the question becomes, what type of shortstop are we looking for? Would you prefer, and I'll keep Aaron Judge in the conversation, would you prefer they go after an Aaron Judge and then sort of a replacement level, starter level, but not all-star level shortstop? Or would you say, forget Aaron Judge temporarily, go after the Trea Turners of the world, the Carlos Correas of the world, the Xander Bogaerts of the world, even the Dansby Swansons of the world? Where do you fall in that? Like, do they just find somebody to play the position, somebody who can field competently, maybe hit 240, something like that? Or do you say, no, we want an all-star at shortstop and we'll figure the rest out later?
I think that I would definitely go after Trea Turner. He's, I guess a big name shortstop, and my preference would be Trea Turner in that equation. I just think he brings so many different things to the lineup that isn't necessarily going to be filled, even like aside from, hey, they need somebody to just man the shortstop position, right? Like, and I know that there are some concerns over how some of his tools may age, namely speed. But I think in the meantime, like, he still has, like we've discussed, 3, 4, 5 years in him where he could, have kind of his foot speed, if you will. But yeah, you bring up a great point. There are multiple kind of question marks, if that's what I think it's fair to say, in the outfield.
Yeah.
And, getting Aaron Judge would certainly fill one of those. And then in theory, it takes some pressure off what you might need production-wise from your whoever is playing shortstop. One concern, though, with that, too, and I think, look, like Gavin Lux, I trust him at second base. I don't think that he would be a good answer at shortstop. That's one, defensively. Two, I also sort of wonder, Gavin Lux had a very good year this season. Can we count on it to be sustained? Like, that's not a guarantee, I don't think.
Yeah. No, look, I'm a Lux believer, so I think the offensive profile that we saw from Gavin Lux, I think is reasonably sustainable. I'm not projecting that to continue to improve, but I think if you're telling me, hey, are you willing to count on Gavin Lux being a guy who, hits somewhere in the 270 to 290 range, 10 home runs, that type of thing? Like, I feel pretty good about that. Remember, this is a guy who has prospect pedigree, so it's not as if this came out of nowhere. That was kind of the Jacob Amaya thing. It's like, yeah, he's had a great first half of the year, but there isn't really that but with Gavin Lux. He's been really good throughout his minor league career. Now, some people can make the case about his major league career up until this point. I would just argue COVID and stuff, it went sideways, not his fault. But I do think you make a good point, is that when we talk about the Trace Thompsons and the Chris Taylors of the world playing the outfield, you're going to have a guy of that level either playing shortstop or in the outfield. So I actually think you can kind of look at Judge or Trea Turner or Correa or whoever almost as an like, we're going to go out and get one stud, and then a couple of these positions are going to get filled in. And by the way, because you've got two outfield spots, I think, open, I don't think you're necessarily limiting the potential for a guy like James Outman or a guy like Michael Busch to potentially get some run at the major league level by going out and signing a Judge. But let's put Judge to the side for a second, because I think that one's, I don't know. It feels like wishful thinking at this point. The Dodgers are always going to be linked. They are linked. Let's talk shortstop. And one of the names we've mentioned that I think is the elephant in the room that we've just got to address here is Carlos Correa. John Heyman has linked the Dodgers to Carlos Correa. Heyman, by the way, said the Dodgers are more likely to target a shortstop than Aaron Judge. That's worth noting. But this is what Heyman said. And, take this with however large a grain of salt you would like to when I tell you that John Heyman is the person who wrote this. He said, the Dodgers would surely love to bring Trea Turner back as he brings a rare speed-power combination to shortstop. But they likely still wonder whether they might be his first choice. I'm going to pause here real quick. The whole Trea Turner East Coast thing, he has literally answered questions about this. Heyman apparently has read none of them. He still thinks it's a thing. Anyways, I continue. And thus, the Dodgers are surveying a very rich shortstop market. No surprise, they appear to have landed on the other comparably great free agent shortstop as an enticing 1A choice, Carlos Correa. They love everything he brings and thus far don't seem to have 2017 reservations. Matt, John Heyman tells you and me that it is no surprise that the Dodgers are interested in Carlos Correa. None whatsoever. Are you okay with Carlos Correa being a guy that the Dodgers offer a contract to and pursue?
Yeah, I still just don't see it. And I will say, though, that I feel the fans are definitely spent, like you're putting up that comment. Fans will not accept Carlos Correa, as Dave Edwards believes. That sentiment I have seen from, a significant number of fans, but there has also been a bigger portion of the fan base that is open to the Dodgers signing Correa, which has surprised me a little bit, but I also feel like how the team sort of went out in the postseason list this year and what happened last year has kind of fueled hey, enough is enough. If he comes and the Dodgers win a World Series, then that's it. Everything would be forgotten. I think that's sort of true, but that's a very long road to get through. And there's also no guarantee. Look, the Dodgers had the best roster in baseball this season, right? There's really no denying that. And we saw the talent, like I said earlier, just not, deliver. And that happens in baseball. So aside from 2017, and that's, a big aside, because again, whenever we discuss Carlos Correa, it's not only that was he on the Astros team that did that, but then it was his comments and his position publicly in the media after that. He had some words for Cody Bellinger. He was basically non-apologetic for what they did. I think that would be an issue in the Dodgers clubhouse.
Yeah, the Correa one to me, and I joke because we've got, some of those people that are pro Carlos Correa signing with the Dodgers happen to work for the same website that you and I work for, Matt. And I'm in the process of filing an HR complaint against Scott Gearman for his Carlos Correa opinions because I don't think they're acceptable or allowed. No, but look, the Correa thing is very obvious. Nobody is ever going to argue about Carlos Correa, the player. He's obviously a very good player. If you are looking at just strictly numbers and spreadsheets and guys that can play shortstop for you, he's an incredible option. And I actually think you can make a compelling case that he's the best option out there. I, as a Trea Turner fan, have also been skeptical of what Trea Turner's career looks like over the next 7 years. A guy that relies on speed, a guy whose power has already started to dip, a guy who's not a great defensive shortstop, obviously had some big miscues, and I think maybe the biggest thing is we still have sort of, I would say the jury is out on Trea Turner's October performance. I think that's a nice way of putting it. I think he was good this year, maybe a B+ level player this year, but this after a career's worth of being like a 220 hitter. And so I think you can make a case that Carlos Correa is the absolute best shortstop available. One thing that's interesting to me, though, Matt, is when he was a free agent last year, he wasn't pursued like all the rest of those guys were. He got a 3-year, $105 million deal that was short, high dollar amount. He could opt out. He's expected to opt out. It is worth noting, Correa and Xander Bogaerts both would need to opt out of their contracts. Trea Turner and Dansby Swanson, the other two guys kind of in the top echelon. I don't know how many tiers you want to split those guys into. But I think it's safe to say, Matt, that Correa on paper obviously belongs in this conversation. Do you have Trea the player? All the Astros, all the 2017 stuff aside, do you prefer Trea the player to Correa the player?
Probably not. I think I'm with you. I think just looking at statistics, career and all that stuff, I think Correa is probably the better player. Especially, I think he's better defensively. And if I remember correctly, though, maybe the metrics may not have graded him as well.
Defensive metrics, that stuff, I say it's helpful to a degree, but you can't trust it the same way you can trust an offensive statistic is the way I would say. So, people always quote like, oh, look at this guy's defensive run saved, or, and it's like, look, everybody thinks that guy sucks. So like if defensive run saves says he doesn't suck, I'm going to trust like the hundreds of experts that all say the guy sucks. So it's one of those types of things. So I mean, look, Mookie Betts grades out well as a right fielder. He's amazing. So I'm not saying they're worthless. I'm just saying like it's one data point amidst many.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. Like, I'm more of a, trust my eyes guy than, hey, let's look at all these advanced stats. So I just was, in case I didn't want anybody to say, actually, Correa's advanced stats show he's terrible. I mean, look, like I've seen him enough that I think he's better defensively than Trea Turner is, at least consistently. I think Trea has the potential. He has the flashes because we did see it. It's just, I don't know what it is. Sometimes, the routine plays, he just gets sort of ahead of himself type thing. But anyway, I think total package, Correa probably is the better player, but there's just a lot of history that you would be asking players in the clubhouse to look past. And that's a lot. And I know, look, fans may not want to hear this, but I don't think the Dodgers are necessarily going to potentially sign Correa or not sign Correa based on whether or not fans will be upset. I don't think fans have agreed with every move that the front office has ever made. So I don't know why, I feel like there's a little bit of a sense of they can sway this opinion more so than other ones. But my biggest concern would be the clubhouse.
Yeah. Just looking at numbers real quick. Trea Turner hit 298 this year. Correa hit 291. Trea Turner had a 343 on base percentage. Correa 366. So Correa hitting 7 points lower in batting average, but obviously Trea Turner doesn't walk a lot. So Correa's on base 23 points higher. And then Correa had a 467 slug to Trea Turner's 466. Trea Turner finished with 21 home runs. Correa finished with 22. 26 for Correa last year, 28 for Trea the year before. So, look, you're just looking at a couple of guys that I think, again, statistically, weirdly as it sounds, are pretty similar. Trea Turner's going to get you more base hits. Carlos Correa is going to get some more walks. All that stuff's pretty much going to come out in the wash. Again, I would just bet on Correa, the player, lasting longer if I was going to try and sign one of these guys. And by the way, it's worth pointing out with Correa that based on the contract he got last year, I mean, is it possible that contract is the best he could do again, like a 4-year, $150 million deal or something? Because I can imagine that the Dodgers would be far more interested in player A at 4 years and $140 million versus player B at 7 years and $250 million, whatever it might be. But the thing that I have to mention is the clubhouse, and it's Carlos Correa. And I'll just say this, and there are times we have opinions as fans that we don't love, or excuse me, that don't make sense. We love our opinions. They just might not make sense. I can sit here and make all the argument in the world for Carlos Correa, the player. If they sign him, I will be on this show talking about Carlos Correa, the player. I don't want to root for him. And at some level, that's what sports is all about, right? Sports at its baseline level is not really about winning. It's about entertainment. The reason winning is so important is because winning is entertaining. And so, like many people struggle to root for Trevor Bauer, and I'm not here to legislate whether they should or should not have signed Trevor Bauer and whether or not we should or should not have been rooting for Trevor Bauer. None of that matters. All I'm saying is I know plenty of people that didn't enjoy that experience. I didn't have a super strong opinion about Trevor Bauer before everything that came out, and now I don't have to worry about it because he's suspended indefinitely and is never going to play for the Dodgers again. But at the end of the day, for me, Matt, as a fan, I just don't want to root for Carlos Correa. I don't like that he was involved in 2017, especially because the Dodgers are on the other end of it. And also, he's one of the few guys that it feels like that has lingered with. He had the Joe Kelly moment where he's, sort of taunting and just being, I don't know what words are acceptable to use here, but just a guy that I don't love rooting for. And so there are some of those guys that I'll probably look back on 5 years from now and say, oh yeah, that guy was on the 2017 Astros that cheated, huh? Like Correa's not going to be one of them. Altuve, Bregman, those are the guys that aren't going to be on that list. And so whether it makes sense on a baseball field, sure, it makes sense to sign Correa. For me as a fan, I don't want to have to deal with, do I root for this guy all the time?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And I think it's important that, both things could definitely be true. I will say I did see a comment. I forgot who. I would have to scroll to try to find it. Maybe a couple people brought up a good point about Correa's back trouble that he's had. That would be, I think, a concern with a player as it aged, unless it was just, kind of a one-time thing. I don't remember the specifics with that. And another thing, too, kind of to your point that you sort of brought up with a potentially short-term contract, the Dodgers' approach may very well be Trea Turner and Carlos Correa. here is kind of our best offer, 5 years, X amount of dollars. First one to say yes, you get it.
Yeah. 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 And I'll say this real quick, because I think that's a great idea. It's worth pointing out, like, Dansby Swanson's another guy on this list that I'm not really that interested in. He had one good year.
I mean, what you would have to pay Dansby Swanson, like, doesn't make sense at that point. Just go find, like you were talking about, a replacement level type defensive minded shortstop that you would plug in there because you spent your money in the outfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, somebody's mentioned, somebody like Willy Adames. Sure. Like, there's probably, it's the guy that's like 2 tiers above Hanser Alberto, basically, that can play a competent shortstop and just sort of be okay hitting wise. Xander Bogaerts, by the way, excuse me, he hit 307 with a 377 on base and a 456 slugging percentage. So he had the best batting average of the three. He had the best on base percentage of the three and was just a tick below them in his slugging percentage. He just had 15 home runs. I believe, again, early in the offseason here, I believe Xander Bogaerts is believed to be the best of the defensive shortstops of the three. So if you're getting similar offensive production with better defense, Bogaerts is 30 years old. So all these guys he's, what does it say? He's 8 months older than Trea Turner. That was surprising to me just because he hasn't been in. Doesn't seem like he's been around not quite as long. Although you look at his Fangraphs page, he's been around. Just maybe he hasn't been in my consciousness there. So yeah, I mean, that's where I land. So if I'm hearing you right, you've got Trea Turner 1, and then you've got what's 2 on the list? Because it sounds like you and I both have Carlos Correa on the, we've taken them off of the draft board.
I mean, I guess he's second, but there's a pretty wide gulf between 1 and 2.
So he's on your list, though. Correa is on your list.
He is, just from the standpoint of, like, he's a good enough player that I think it warrants potentially kicking the tires on. And I will say, like, I don't necessarily think this is something that Andrew Friedman and the front office would do without speaking to the clubhouse leaders and certainly the players from the 2017 Dodgers team that may still be around next year and the year before. And I know that that's a dwindling group at this point, and there could be a scenario where, I mean, quickly running through my head, there may not be any on the team next year, but I don't think that will be the case.
Yeah. Real quick, somebody in here was talking about Willy Adames. Adames did hit 31 home runs. He also had a 298 on base percentage this year. So, like, all these guys, you're getting one thing and giving up another. Adames had 25 home runs the previous year. Did have a better 337 on base percentage. So the 315 seems to be 318. There you go. So his career average is 322 with the 255 on batting average. So, look, Adames is fine. Like, I don't think he's 27, so he's got that going for him. I don't think he's belongs in the same sort of tier as these. I mean, you could make an argument maybe that he belongs in the Dansby Swanson tier. Like, maybe Dansby Swanson's at the top of that tier and a guy like Adames is below him. But I'm just throwing that one out there because that's a name that I've seen mentioned as well. All right, let's shift gears here a little bit, move away from free agency talk. Let's talk everybody else's. Besides if Carlos Correa isn't your favorite topic, Dave Roberts seems to be your favorite topic for most Dodgers fans. Some talk over the past couple of weeks bringing back up the fact that Dave Roberts made a guarantee early in the season, Matt, that they were going to win the World Series. Breaking news, the Dodgers did not win the World Series. Any issue in hindsight with Dave Roberts' early season guarantee? Because some people seem pretty frustrated by this.
No, and I know it wasn't your intention, but this did happen. Like, when he made that guarantee, it was with the caveat of if our starting pitching remains healthy.
Yeah.
So I would have given it a little more pause if he had just flat out said, I guarantee we're winning the World Series. But there was that caveat. But also at the end, and Dave Roberts said, as he was asked about it multiple times throughout the season, if he was still sticking by it, if he still believed it, he did say, like, what am I supposed to say? Right. And if he had come out and said, I hope we win the NL West, like, how upset would fans have been with that? Right. Like, even if you would have said, hey, we didn't win the division in 2021, I hope we win the NL West this year. And that's it. Like, fans would have been livid, and rightfully so. I think Andrew Friedman sort of put it best when I think it was a ESPN Sunday night game that they were broadcasting, and he joined the booth and he said, look, it wasn't the approach that I would have taken, but of course it's what we believe and what we expect. And so that's kind of the bucket that I fall in. I'm not somebody who would vocalize necessarily something like that. I would just let kind of the body of work, hopefully, support it. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I don't think it put pressure on the team.
That's the question I wanted to get at. Like, the people that are mad about this, nobody here is going to argue that Dave Roberts doesn't believe this to be true, right? Like, there's not a single person out there who thinks it's crazy for Dave Roberts to believe that he has the best team in baseball. Everybody in Vegas setting lines believed it. The players on the field believed it. The standings proved it. Like, he was correct to believe that. Okay, so I can't imagine anybody's going to argue that Dave Roberts should believe the things. Now, the issue becomes, should he say them out loud? And to me, the question that I would ask is, what is the harm in doing it? Like, did Freddie Freeman hit worse because he was like, oh, do you remember, Matt? 8 months ago, my manager said that we were going to win the World Series. And if I don't get a hit here, and he said we were going to do it, like, oh, my goodness. Yency Almonte's on the mound. He's like, man, I got to throw this strike. Because do you remember when Dave Roberts, I might not have even been at the major league level, but when I was there, he made I just don't understand. Like, obviously he thinks it. Obviously every fan is expecting a World Series. The reason all of you want him fired is because they didn't win one. So he guarantees it, and then you're mad at him for not doing it and for saying it at the same time. Like, I don't understand how all of these pieces fit together.
Yeah, I think, honestly, this is just an unfortunate situation of, one, when something, quote-unquote, goes wrong or doesn't happen, and in this case, obviously, winning the World Series, fans and people in general tend to look for a person to blame, right? And in sports, across the board, 9 times out of 10, it kind of falls on the manager or the head coach first. Then after that, it's probably the general manager. In this case, it would be the president of baseball operations, right? Like, there's kind of that hierarchy of who gets axed first. And so I think it's more that. And we've discussed it in the past postseasons. Dave Roberts has certainly made decisions that were much more egregious and questionable than anything we saw this year. And so I think his history is sort of being used against him. And look, like I said, had he made some of those same quote-unquote mistakes this time around, I think it would have been justified for the Dodgers to say, you know what, we want to just kind of move, change directions and go with a different voice, which I raised the point, like, should they maybe consider that anyway, as much as it would be kind of unfair. But I can tell you, like, the players, they didn't even know when they were clinching the NL West. They didn't know any of those scenarios. They didn't feel any pressure from anything he said. I think at some point, either Justin Turner or maybe even Freddie Freeman was asked about it, and they said, yeah, we love it, and like, we want it to come true. And like, that was it. Like, of course, like, what are the players? Like, what do you think the players think, right? Like, they don't go to spring training saying, hey guys, let's try to win a lot of games this year, and that's it. Or, let's see what happens. Like, the Dodgers have built themselves to a point where it is basically World Series or bust, and that is high stakes poker, because, like, we've seen year in and year out, the best team doesn't always win, and that's kind of what ends up happening.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, how many people here could name the Phillies manager a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
I couldn't.
I barely know the guy's name today, and he's 2 games into the World Series. Like, my point is, what? Everybody here is going to believe this guy to be the greatest manager in the history of the world because he wins the World Series this year, despite the fact that, people probably wanted that guy fired like 6 months ago, and they won 89 games or whatever the number was. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think the standards are crazy. And, oh my gosh, he's lost 7 of the last 8. Well, he also won one. Like, not a lot of guys in Major League history have won one, and Dave Roberts did. And, the idea that, I don't know. We don't need to get into my Dave Roberts thing. I'm with you. People are looking for somebody to blame, and they found Dave Roberts, and they're looking for something to blame in Roberts, because guess what? He didn't make a ton of crazy decisions in the postseason like normal, so we're grasping for straws, and what we find is Dave Roberts months and months and months ago saying, hey, I guarantee we're going to win the World Series, and that's that. But I don't know. I just think, like, he's coming back. We might as well just embrace it and move on and not be angry about it. I don't know. Let's shift gears one more time, and we'll get to questions here at the end. But let's talk awards season, and we got a lot to get to here, Matt, okay? You and I have not talked Gold Gloves yet. This is a video Scott and I did. Tyler Anderson, go Ducks, nominated for a Gold Glove at pitcher, as we all expected. No surprise there, right, Matt? We all had Tyler Anderson on our Gold Glove list.
That definitely was on my radar. I absolutely had him being nominated for it.
If I had said, Matt, there are 2 Dodgers nominated for a Gold Glove, what number guess do you think Tyler Anderson would have been? Because you definitely would have said Mookie 1, Then you've probably got Cody 2, Freddie 3.
Yep.
And then, I mean, maybe Will Smith gets a nomination. He's not great, but like,
Right.
you know, Chris Taylor, utility. Look, he got nominated for a Silver Slugger. I mean, like, you'd have to go. If I even told you as a pitcher, Kershaw, like, probably there's probably guys that are getting nominated for the pitching spot ahead of Tyler Anderson. So, anyways, Anderson gets nominated. Mookie Betts gets nominated. I mean, Mookie Betts expected to win. He won the Fielding Bible Award, which is a thing that I learned about recently. I mean, Mookie should win this award, right? Like, I don't pretend to know the guys he's up against and how good they are, other than that Juan Soto is not very good at defense, and I can't believe he's nominated. But, like, Mookie has to be nominated, or has to win, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I forget all the different stats. He was certainly first among NL right fielders in one of them, and then, like, top 2 in 4 or 5 other different categories. And so I expect him to win. The pitcher one, honestly, like, I don't know how because Tyler Anderson.
I think it is based on like defensive runs saved. Like I think somebody just Googled that, and those are the 3 guys they picked. Max Fried has won back-to-back, by the way.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. Like short of, maybe one pitcher oddly having, a spectacular play in every single one of his starts or committing a bunch of errors. Like I don't know how you necessarily really evaluate them, but they do, and more power to them. So. But I couldn't even begin to guess. I mean, I think Max Fried is nominated again this year.
Yep.
So maybe because of his history, he's the favorite to win it. But I certainly see Mookie, and I see kind of a lot of the cynicism with Mookie in the comments.
Yeah. People not happy with Mookie and his bowling thing. But again, I mean, if you're looking for something to be mad at, there you go. I mean, Cody Bellinger, Freddie Freeman, those are 2 guys that, again, I'm not pretending to have knowledge of the other guys nominated, their positions. I will be the first to admit that I am not as locked in on every team in Major League Baseball as I am on the Dodgers. I thought Cody was fantastic. He's widely known to be one of, if not the best defensive center fielder in baseball. I know he's been terrible offensively, but this is a defensive award. I thought Freddie Freeman was great. Freddie's kind of the interesting one because when I said that, I got a lot of pushback from people that didn't think he had a good year defensively, which was surprising to me. So, I mean, where were you at on Cody and Freddie Freeman?
Bellinger surprised me a little bit, and I'm sure people who are with us now and have watched some of our videos, they know how highly I think of him defensively.
Yeah.
So, I expected him to be a finalist, and he wasn't. And, I mean, I don't know. I didn't think he should have lost to Trent Grisham either last year or 2 years ago, whenever that was. And so I think he just doesn't grade out very well with some of the metrics. With Freddie, I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. Had he been a finalist, I would have thought, that makes sense. Like I remember seeing him pick out several throws in the dirt.
I was good. That was the thing. I feel like how many innings ended with a throw in the dirt and Freddie just like scooping it perfectly. It just felt like he never missed that play. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. In terms of like, spectacular kind of flashy plays, there were a couple catches I remember him making, but nothing really comes to mind. And by that same token, I don't really remember him committing like a bunch of errors and thinking, man, like what's wrong with this guy? But yeah, I mean, that one, and frankly, even Bellinger, just because I feel like maybe he was, even though it's supposed to be defense only, maybe he's kind of hurt by just overall perception of his play these days. So yeah, I don't. And at the end of the day, like these awards,
who cares?
Yeah.
Okay, Silver Slugger. Speaking of who cares, Matt, Dodgers 6 nominees. Mookie Betts, obviously nominated. 35 home runs, National League lead in runs scored. 873 OPS. No surprise to see Mookie Betts nominated. Freddie Freeman nominated. We know he's probably going to finish in the top 2 or 3 in MVP voting. So, unfortunately, he probably won't win any of these awards because Paul Goldschmidt is probably going to win all of them. But he was nominated. Will Smith, unsurprising to anybody that watches this show, nominated at the catcher position. Another fantastic year for him. OPS over 800, 26 doubles, 24 bombs. Good for him. Justin Turner had a great you look at his numbers, 278 batting average, 350 on base, 438 slug, 36 doubles, only 13 home runs, but he gets nominated, no surprise there. And then Trea Turner, also no surprise, hits almost 300. He's in the MVP conversation, 39 doubles, 21 home runs, 100 RBIs, yada, yada, yada. And then, Matt, the utility position. I posted on Twitter, I said, scroll down to make sure you get to the fun part of these awards. You get to the utility position. Chris Taylor, is nominated, Matt, for a Silver Slugger Award. Chris Taylor, in case you have forgotten, hit 221 this year with a 304 on base percentage and 10 home runs and 43 RBIs. And he's nominated for a Silver Slugger, Matt. I love the idea of the utility position. The Gold Glove, 2 of the 3 guys nominated for the Gold Glove at the utility position are also nominated at other positions. That makes no sense to me. And then Chris Taylor's nominated the Silver Slugger. I like the idea. 2022 says just set the utility position on fire, I think, is the moral of the story. That's my Silver Slugger reaction. Take that wherever you would like to go.
Yeah, I'll go. So I'm with you. I was surprised to see Chris Taylor nominated just because, I think he would admit too, he didn't have the season that he expects out of himself. I would have to dig into kind of the utility player grouping, I guess, to really see, but it must be a pretty shallow pool. So that was a little surprising. And
it might be a 3-person pool. For all we know, there might have been 3 guys that qualified.
Justin Turner, I guess it's similar to what you just brought up with the Gold Glove. Justin Turner getting nominated for third base and DH, I thought was kind of interesting because I didn't know that was possible with the Silver Slugger Awards. I thought maybe it kind of just
it should be one position. Like you can't. How can you be the best at both positions? You should only be able to qualify for one position, as far as I'm concerned. I didn't even realize when I looked through that he was nominated for both, which is sort of hilarious. But I mean, I guess a lot, He played DH for the Dodgers, probably more than him and Muncy, right?
Yeah. So from a common sense standpoint, I could see why it is the case. But and this isn't specific to him. It's just in general. Like I do agree. It kind of seems like a player should be at a position or the DH type thing. But hey, I mean, if it potentially increases his chances on winning a Silver Slugger, then more power to him.
Yeah. I mean, looking through these, I think Mookie has a real chance to win out in right field. I think Will Smith has a real chance to win at catcher. Those are probably the only 2 guys. I mean, I guess Trea Turner at shortstop. Like those 3 guys probably, like reasonable expectation. I haven't looked at odds or anything, but I would imagine that those 3 guys are probably at or near the top in those 3 groupings.
Yeah, I think Mookie is a pretty safe lock. I think Trea Turner is the next best bet. And I mean, I don't want to burst your bubble with Will Smith, but I will, just from the standpoint of he doesn't seem to get kind of the widespread recognition that I know you certainly believe he deserves and that I'm in your corner on as well.
Yeah, here we go. Let's see. I'm curious. Oh, this is never mind. I was going to try and find odds, but I don't think I don't even know if they could bet on the Silver Slugger. I mean, you should be able to bet on anything, but anyways, I'm not going to find it there.
We need to get an over-under line on your Will Smith mentions for this show. We need to write someone in Vegas.
Yeah, it's going to be high. It's going to be high. We'll have to clarify whether the janitor counts as a Will Smith mention. I think so. Let's not forget also, Matt, the Players' Choice Award. Freddie Freeman nominated for National League Outstanding Player. Julio Urias nominated for National League Outstanding Pitcher. So there you go. I don't expect either of those guys to win those awards, but kudos to them for getting nominated. Again, the Gold Glove winners will be announced on Tuesday. The Players' Choice Award winners will be announced on Thursday. The Silver Slugger Award winners will be announced a week from Thursday. And then Mookie Betts has already taken home a Fielding Bible Award, which is basically just like there's a 15-person committee, and he won that for right field, I believe, right? Like he didn't win the overall one.
Correct. Yeah, it was in right field, but that one, Fielding Bible does it like it doesn't separate the way Gold Glove does, where there's National League winners and American League winners. So they recognized him basically as the best defensive right fielder in baseball, which certainly the eye test, it checks out.
Yeah, seems to fit. All right, let's get to some questions here. We got about 5 or 6 more minutes. So if you've got a question for us, throw it in the chat. We'll throw it up. We'll start talking about it. I'll get to this one from Kevin on Twitter. He says, what do you guys think about trading high on guys like Lux and Gonsolin? Gonsolin coming off of a career year, and this might be the best we see of Lux. He's more average than anything else. He did ask about backup options at shortstop. We talked a little bit. He mentioned Adames as well. But let's focus on that. Do you think there's a chance that the Dodgers would sell high on a guy like Tony Gonsolin or a guy like Gavin Lux?
No, and honestly, I think those, if they did explore trade talks for those two, the conversations would be interesting, right? Because you could look at the season Gonsolin had. The Dodgers could certainly say, hey, we're trying to sell high, and whoever they're negotiating with can come back and say, well, wait a minute, he had a forearm injury late in the year. He then, wasn't really sharp or built up in the postseason and didn't look great. So, what are you kind of selling us right now? Like, is it as high as you think? And also, frankly, with Gonsolin specifically, the Dodgers are pretty short on pitching going into next season.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're in any position to trim into that depth, especially because we can describe him, consider him an established major league starter at this point, right? Whereas Ryan Pepio is still getting his feet wet. Andre Jackson isn't there yet. Bobby Miller hasn't even made his debut, and neither have some of the other prospects. So that's Gonsolin specifically. With Lux, I think sort of the same thing. Like, yes, he had the best season of his young career so far, but there were some inconsistencies late. And so, what is going to kind of hold true? I do agree with you, like you mentioned earlier, that there's reason for optimism with Lux, but if I feel like there's also, some question marks, I would imagine that whatever team the Dodgers were trading him to would bring those up as well.
Yeah, I mean, my response is really simple, is both those guys play positions of what I would consider to be need. Gavin Lux being a middle infielder, now you can make the case, like, hey, if they bring Justin Turner back, if Max Muncy moves over, Miguel Vargas is part of the equation, then maybe second base isn't quite as much of a need. But I mean, we currently don't have literally anybody on the roster that can play shortstop competently, but besides Lux and maybe Chris Taylor. And Lux at least hit. So for me, it depends on what the Dodgers think of him. Like, do the Dodgers think they would be selling high, or do they actually think they would be selling low? Do they think this is sustainable, or do they think this is a fluke and, like, let's just, get rid of him while we can? And Gonsolin on his side, like, it's like you said. I mean, the Dodgers are short pitcher. We're talking about, are they going to give Tyler Anderson $18 million a year on a qualifying offer because they need starting pitchers with some of the injuries that they've endured and Walker Buehler being out and whatnot. And so I don't see either of those guys being moved. If the Dodgers are going to trade, it's going to be from the minors. It's going to be a guy who you mentioned, a guy like Pepio, a guy like Grove. It's going to be lower level, a guy like Michael Busch. I think those are much more likely players because Lux and Gonsolin have proven they can do it at the major league level already. So I don't think you would trade away from what you know in order to take your chances on something that's a bit more of a mystery. So I would say that both of those guys, I just can't see them making a move. Now, if a guy like Ohtani becomes available, or if we want to sort of morph this into a shortstop conversation, are the Chicago White Sox willing to listen on Tim Anderson type player at shortstop if the Dodgers miss out? Then we start talking about Gavin Lux, Tony Gonsolin, those types of names. But unless we're talking about an all-star level player at shortstop or at starting pitcher or something, or Ohtani who does all of it, then I really don't see Lux or Gonsolin being moved. I think it comes from the minors. I mean, is that where you stand? You think it's prospects rather than guys who have proven it?
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing the Dodgers have historically done under Andrew Friedman is traded from areas of strength throughout the organization, not just the 25-man roster or the 40-man roster. And so, like they do have a lot of young pitchers, and so will some of them be used as trade chips? I think Michael Busch is an interesting trade candidate as well, just because it's not really clear where he may fit with this team if and when he makes it to the major league level. And he is somebody who, you could still sell, like, the upside. Like, he could still develop into this where teams may have made up their mind as to what Gavin Lux's ceiling is already, and whether or not they're right or wrong. Obviously, time will tell, but that could be something the Dodgers are negotiating against.
Yeah, absolutely. Eddie asks, if the Dodgers don't sign Trea Turner or get a free agent to play shortstop, who do you think will start at short for next season? I'm going to rephrase. I mean, I have no idea who starts if they don't sign anybody. I mean, I guess it would be Chris Taylor, or Gavin Lux, or Hanser Alberto, right? Like, those are, or I guess Jacob Amaya maybe. I think Amaya, I think most people believe can play it defensively. So I suppose he's a real potential option. I think there are a couple other guys I can mention here in a minute that are free agents that are more in the replacement level tier that I was referencing. But I mean, is there anybody I'm missing that can play shortstop for the Dodgers?
Not too much. And I mean, I feel like this is a really difficult question to answer because there would be so many moving pieces to it if they miss out on a big name shortstop. But I could see it, assuming that the Dodgers then spent their money elsewhere. I could see a scenario where maybe Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux play, a split at shortstop type thing. I know he didn't necessarily ask for trade candidates, but you mentioned him earlier, Tim Anderson. I think that would be worth looking, kicking the tires on to see. And I mean, depending on how it shakes out, if you end up getting an Aaron Judge and your lineup, your offensive production is filled from the outfield rather than shortstop, maybe they reunite with Jose Peraza as kind of the replacement level defensive minded guy that can just play the position.
Yeah, one other name I'll throw out, Jose Iglesias, is a guy that's mentioned, played this past year with the Rockies, is about to turn 33 years old. But these are the numbers I'm kind of referring to. Hit 292, 328 on base, 380 slugging percentage. So that's not going to get you excited. A 708 OPS, a wins above replacement of like 1.3, 3 home runs. But look, if a guy hits 290 and plays you competent defense, maybe you're okay with it. But I guess that gets at sort of the desperation I think they're in when it comes to shortstop. Let's see. Jason asks, what Dodger regular would you not be surprised to see traded this offseason? He says, me first, Lux to the Marlins with Correa for Alcantara. I am going to go out on a limb and say the Marlins will not be trading Alcantara, but this is sort of a cheating answer for me, Matt, but I'm going to say Bellinger. I think Bellinger is gone. So will he be traded? I don't know. I can't imagine a team would trade for him, knowing that they would have to pay him that final year of arbitration, which is probably way above market value. So maybe that's sort of a cheat there. But he's the Dodger regular I would not be surprised to see moved on from. How about that?
Yeah, that's fair.
I saw Edwin Rios. He doesn't qualify as a regular, but he was a guy that I saw mentioned in the comments as somebody that maybe gets moved.
Yeah, I could see that too. I don't think the Dodgers move from Correa right now, just because he's still he's multiple years away from being major league ready that you don't need to do something like that. I do think that is an interesting discussion framed a different way with Will Smith and Correa, because at some point their careers will start to overlap, and what will the Dodgers do then? But they're not there now, and I don't see them selling that lottery ticket just yet. Look at Keibert Ruiz, made his MLB debut with the team before they, finally just packaged him together. So they'll wait on that. It's got to be Bellinger, like you said, maybe Edwin Rios.
Trace Thompson.
I don't think it'd be Trace. I was going to say maybe Chris Taylor if they could find somebody to take him, but I think the Dodgers value what he brings defensively, and there is value to that, his versatility. And he had a down year, and I think they'll count on him bouncing back. Look, they put their faith in him in the NLDS despite his limited at bats, for the final weeks of the regular season. So there's certainly no loss of trust there.
Yeah, I'm not writing off Chris Taylor as gone forever, by the way. I'm also not just banking on old Chris Taylor showing back up. I think it's sort of like I need to see more of a sample size than what I've seen to believe that he's totally gone. Last question here. James Outman 2024 asks, is DeGrom worth paying big money with his injury history? $150 million over 3 years. For context here on DeGrom, he made 15 starts last season, 11 starts this season, just 156 total innings between the two. Last year, 1.08 ERA across those 15 starts. This year struggled down the stretch, 3.08 ERA, although the expected ERA of 2.24, the FIP of 2.13. His strikeout numbers are through the roof, over 14 Ks per 9 innings and a walk of just 1 walk per 9 innings. So the numbers are amazing. Look, there's not a soul in the world that is giving him $50 million a year for 3 years. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't. That would be insane to me. With the injury history he has, I think a 3-year deal would be crazy, let alone at $50 million a year. I could see him getting like 3 for 100, maybe, but 2 for 80, something like that. But if you're going to give this guy big money multiple years, I don't know. Am I way off on this, Matt?
I disagree with you a little bit, because I think he's going to get a long-term deal from someone. And so I would take the 3 years, $150 million.
Do you know how old DeGrom is? He's 34 and a half.
Oh, okay. He's older than I thought. He was only like 32 or 33. So
no, and I'm not like jumping in to correct you. Like, I'm just like I think of him as a guy who is younger, but he's 34 and a half.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize he was that old. That's certainly worth weighing. I guess it then also comes down to, like, has he thrown as many innings as most 34? You said he was 34 or 33?
34 and a half. He'll turn 35 in June.
So has he thrown as many innings as most 34-year-olds? Probably not. But the reason he hasn't is because of the injuries, right? So it's kind of like, how do you balance that?
How's that for a comp? DeGrom is 2 months younger than Clayton Kershaw. There you go.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. But I would sign him at a big number for 3 years. I would take that chance. Wow. And maybe what you do is you guarantee him like closer to 100, and you build in incentives to get him to 150 type thing.
So where does DeGrom rank on the Aaron Judge, Trea Turner big free agent splashes for you?
In terms of like how I think the Dodgers should
If you could, like who would be your priority of those? How would you rank Judge, DeGrom, and Trea? Because you're higher on DeGrom than I think I am.
So I'll throw in a wild card for you. I'll do Trea first, Judge second, Correa third.
Wow.
And then I think DeGrom is like fourth or fifth for me.
So you have Trea. I mean, whatever. We'll have to do a separate video. Trea over Judge. That's why. I mean, I would take Judge 1, and then probably Trea 2 and DeGrom 3. The DeGrom thing terrifies me. THP saying he's also has already had Tommy John. So and I get like there's a need starting pitching. I think you can make a case there's a need, but man, 3 years and $120 million or something like that for DeGrom would terrify me. And the guy has made 26 starts in the last 2 years.
He's been pretty good, right?
He's been incredible. He's been incredible.
Very good. They've been very good start. We'll have to get Blake on here either for a live show or a short video. He's a big DeGrom guy. We were talking about it over the weekend last week. He would do. I don't remember if he said he would do a long-term contract for DeGrom, but that's one of his guys. Man. Okay, maybe I had to dig in a little more on the health history stuff and what missed, why we missed the years that we did there. But man, that just scares me to see a guy. And I mean, again, his actual numbers tailed off towards the end of this past season. Again, the expected ERA is 2.24, so maybe the metrics didn't. He just got a little unlucky. But there you go. Hey, folks, we appreciate you joining us here on a Sunday night for DodgerHeads Live. That's Matt Moreno. My name's Jeff Spiegel. As always, make sure you're following us on Dodger Blue 1958 on social media everywhere, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you're following and subscribed and ring the notification bell here on YouTube because we are still putting out content. We had 4 or 5 videos come out this past week breaking down news and rumors as they come out. The good news about being a Dodger fan is there's always rumors. There's always reports. We even did one talking about is there any chance we're rooting for the Phillies? Or excuse me, the Astros. The answer was no. No chance we're rooting for the Astros. But make sure you follow Matt on Twitter. Follow me. Matt, anything else we need to know about? Lots of stuff going on at DodgerBlue.com as well. No, I think you covered it all. We appreciate everybody supporting us through the offseason and tuning in tonight. And like you said, we'll continue to have daily articles and regular videos for everyone.
Awesome. Well, again, we appreciate you all joining us. Enjoy the rest of your night. As always, we'll say go Dodgers. And because of the context and because of where we are, I'm going to throw one more in there. Go Phillies. Please, Phillies, do not let the Astros win the World Series.